Es el caso de Easygenerator, el poder del aprendizaje generado por los empleados. Un estudio de caso de 5 empresas multinacionales presentado por Kasper Spiro, co-founder and Chief Learning Strategy de Easygenerator. Así que ya mismo le damos la bienvenida y les recordamos a quienes están del otro lado de la transmisión que si necesitan la traducción pueden hacer el cambio de canal en la barra de herramientas que tienen en su pantalla, donde aparece el mundo, presionando ahí y eligen su mejor opción. Hola.
Hi, can I start?
Yes, hi Kasper. Nice to
Hi.
meet you. You can start. We listen.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen. There we are. Yes, you should see the presentation now. So good morning, I guess, for most of you. So indeed, I'm Kasper Spiro, co-founder and chief learning strategist at Easygenerator, a tool that facilitates content creation by just normal employees, so not for e-learning specialists. Today, I will explain a bit about the ideas behind the tool, so why we came to it, and also an example of one of our customers who works with the combination of the idea of what we call employee-generated learning and the flipped classroom. So I'm working in the world of e-learning for a long time, and I love e-learning from the first moment that I laid eyes on it. But I also have a couple of issues, and those issues are related to speed, to cost, and to maintenance. I will briefly explain. So to create 1 hour of e-learning or any form of distance learning depends a bit on how we do it, but it is somewhere between roughly $10,000 and $30,000. So pretty expensive. The reason it's so expensive is it takes a lot of hours to create that content. So estimations are like 90 to 140 hours of work to create 1 hour of distance learning. So it's fair to say that the creation of e-learning is expensive and it's slow. And those are two of the things I don't like. And if you look at the process of how normally an e-learning course is created, you see the reason for that. So you have a learning and development department where an instruction designer is responsible for the creation of e-learning. Most of those courses are on business topics, and that means the instruction designer does not have that knowledge. So they need to interview subject matter experts, so SMEs, as we call them. Employees, people who know about the business side. So he interviews them, he has to process that into in the form of an e-learning. He has to go back to them. If there are any differences in what they say, he needs to solve that. So that process of going back and forth to SMEs and putting that information into a proper e-learning course, that is the main reason why the creation of e-learning is so slow. So, but there's a second problem, or a third problem, I have to say, and that is after a course is done, most of the time it's being published in an LMS, and that is a learning management system, a system that can bring the course to the learner, to the business side of things. And then the problem arises because the instructor designer is responsible for the maintenance of that course. He needs to make sure it stays up to date. And the problem, of course, is that the instruction designer is not connected to the business. So if anything changes there, he's not aware of that. So it is impossible for an instructional designer to keep that course up to date because he does not have the business knowledge. So that means that that content will not be updated, and it means that most courses living in an LMS are indeed outdated. Very, very few of them are accurate and up to date. So that is really frustrating. So if you combine those three things, it led me to the conclusion that we spend a lot of time and a lot of money to teach people outdated stuff. And I love to do things with e-learning, but I want to solve this issue. And that is what we do with Easygenerator. So the solution for that is very simple. You just leave the knowledge where it is. And knowledge is not with the L&D department or the instruction designer. The knowledge lives on the business side of things with the employees. So you don't start interviewing them and bring that knowledge to the L&D department. You just ask the business to create the knowledge. So that looks like this. So the business then subject matter expert, the employee, or very often a group of employees, they are the ones who are going to create the content. And by the way, that gives already the first advantage, because some customers was found that it's like 10 times faster to create content with subject matter experts than in the old process with interviewing and going back and forth. So it's already faster and cheaper, but most importantly, it is the subject matter expert who is responsible for the content, not only for the creation, but also for the maintenance. And that means that after the content is being published, the subject matter expert is still responsible for it. So if something changes in the business, so if a process changes, if they discover new best practice, or if they want to share a how-to in the context of that course, they can just go into Easygenerator, go into that course, update the course, and press update. So this is the only way that you can actually create content, learning content that is accurate and up to date. And does that mean that the instructional designer does not have a role at all? No, they have a big role, and it depends a bit on different organizations. I will briefly touch on that a bit later. With some, the instructional designers have a very heavy role. With others, it's a very light role, but almost always there is a role for instructional designers. And they can do a lot. They can coach, they can co-author, they can help design, they can review content or from a didactical perspective. They can manage the whole process. So there are a ton of things that they can do. The only thing that they are not allowed to do is to take over the end responsibility for the content. The responsibility for the creation and the maintenance of the content needs to lie in the business with the subject matter expert. That's the only way to make this work, the only way to get the advantages of employee-generated learning. So that is the process that we created, and Easygenerator is a tool built to do this. And that tool is now live for like 10 years. So we have almost 2,000 customers using Easygenerator. And today I want to share the story of one of them. So it's a large manufacturer of household appliances. And they started using Easygenerator 5 or 6 years ago. And they started in Europe, where they have a sales department. And what they had was a face-to-face training program. The point was that they were not selling the appliances and the equipment themselves, but this was done through a network of local partners. So, for example, a partner in Italy would sell their equipment. The point is that those partners need to be trained. And in order to do that, they had something like, from the top of my head, something like 70 trainers who were traveling through Europe and were able to give those courses, those trainings in, I think, about in 32 different languages. And they were going there and give a 3-day face-to-face training. And the problem with that was that, of course, it's really expensive. So both for, of course, our customer who has to send those trainers over for that amount of time, but also, of course, for the partners, because they had to get people away from their work for 3 days. And the other problem with it, it was not scalable. They couldn't make it larger in a fast way. So they want to achieve that. And with that, they wanted to go to a blended approach. So they wanted to mix e-learning together with face-to-face training in order to solve that problem. So what they did, they acquired a learning management system, a system where you can run courses in, and they bought licenses for Easygenerator. And then they asked the trainers for the different courses that they have, so not the L&D department, but asked the trainers to look at the 3-day training that they had and put all the knowledge part of that training into Easygenerator. And with that, they are doing something which we know as flipping the classroom. So if I first look at the general process, so it was designed by the 2 guys on the top of the screen, Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams. So they're 2 professors. So, and they noticed that, if they were giving a lecture to their students and then give an assignment for them to do homework, and the students went home to do the homework, all of them got stuck doing the assignment. So they came back the next time and they were not have not been able to solve the assignment. So what they came up with was a very simple idea, and that was to record the lecture on video and ask the students before. So that's what here in the line asynchronous is. So it means that everybody can do it in their own time. It's not like a group activity. So everybody needs, before they go into the classroom, they need to watch the lecture. So basically they get the explanation at home in their own time. And then when they go into the classroom, the teachers are not going to repeat that knowledge. They're going to work on the application of the knowledge. And how is that? By doing the assignment. So basically they do their homework in the classroom. And that way the students have to process the knowledge. And if they get stuck, the teachers are there to help them out. And what they found is it's not only a faster way of learning, but also you get like a higher learning outcome, because it goes beyond just knowledge transfer. People are really able to apply the knowledge and understand what you can do with it. And that is a big difference. So it's faster and it is also more effective. And afterwards, you can also use, again, an e-learning module to check if everybody has understood it. So you could send out like a small recap, or you could send out a small exam to see if everybody really got the key elements. So if you apply that to the problem of Electrolux, it is almost the same. So what they did, they took that 3-day training program and took out all the knowledge part, as I said, asked subject experts to do that. And that meant that they created an e-learning course. And that e-learning course was usable for all trainers. So they only had a few trainers working together creating that. So that was the first advantage. Before that, every trainer was working with his own deck of PowerPoint. So it now became the same for everybody, but also the level, the quality was way higher. And it was created by those trainers, but the learning department actually helped them out, making sure that it was a really good, also from a didactic perspective, piece of training material. So when they had that, they asked the students, so the salespeople from the partners, to actually take that Easygenerator course in the learning management system before the training. And the training itself was no longer 3 days, it was only a 1-day training. And like with the flipped classroom in the university, then there is no knowledge transfer during that 1-day session. It's all about applying the knowledge. So in this case, they were doing, for example, role plays to see how can you actually use the things that you learned in the course, and how can you apply them in a sales conversation. And then the coach from the customer was there to help them out and to make sure that they did that in a very best way. So, and they found a lot of advantages there. So it was indeed faster, the level of learning was higher, and also the people were much more engaged, because sitting in a classroom and receiving a lot of knowledge isn't the most fun thing to do, and also very hard if you then are asked to process it. If you have all the knowledge beforehand and then you can apply it and actually play with it and learn with it, that is a really powerful concept. And with Electrolux, they also use Easygenerator indeed to check back on the trainees. So they actually send out a small recap of the things they learned. They get 2 weeks later a small exam, so people can sort of get the information back in top of their heads, and they can also check if the information is still there. So they apply to flipped classroom with employee-generated learning, content created not by the L&D department, but in this case by sales trainers. And that is just one of the examples you have. And if you look at the benefits, by the way, there was a big benefit in for the customer and for us, because we actually won an award from the Chief Learning Officer magazine with it, the Golden Learning in Practice Award we got exactly for this business case together with the customer. So the benefits that come out of this is there are better learning outcomes. So it is more than just understanding and remembering. If you look at Bloom's taxonomy, it's actually being able to apply that knowledge. It's easier for the student because there's time between getting the knowledge in your head and actually have to apply it. All the students are at the same level when the training starts, which is really beneficial for the trainer because everybody took the same course, so they all know the theory. The content production is way faster because just a few of the trainers will work on the course and only a few of them will actually maintain it instead of everyone doing that every time. So higher quality, lower cost there. And the face-to-face time reduced from 3 days to 1 day, which is a huge advantage. And by the way, they started working with us before COVID. And as you can imagine, during COVID, it was not possible for them to send the trainers over to the place for the 1 day event. So they actually also moved that into to Zoom and team meetings. So they went completely online, but still in a flipped classroom model, because that was then a synchronous session online, like we're doing now, instead of doing it asynchronous. So that is the flipped classroom. So just to briefly touch on a lot of other applications of other use cases, just we'll go through them really quickly. So in general, there are two approaches for working with employees who create e-learning. The crucial part of it that the employee is responsible, as I said, for the creation and the maintenance. That way, it's faster, it's cheaper, and you can solve the maintenance issue. But there are two approaches. So one we call the regulated approach, and the other, by the way, EGL stands for employee-generated learning, so content created by employees. So regulated and democratized. So if you look at the regulated approach, it's very much the normal process of content creation with a small tweak. So it's the instructional designer who's responsible to create a course. So they initiate it, but instead of interviewing subject matter expert, they now ask subject matter expert to write content and become responsible for that part of the content, or maybe even for the whole course, not only for the creation, but also the maintenance. So they sort of change that around. So instead of interviewing them and writing it down, the author now becomes, the employee becomes the author. And the subject matter expert is guided by the instructional designer very heavily, usually as a coach. They're also the ones that sort of check it out at the end. They're also the ones that put it into a learning management system. So a very top-down regulated approach, very much like the old school e-learning content creation. There are also customers who see Easygenerator and employee-generated learning more as a way to democratize content creation. So basically, they give the tool to anyone who wants to create a course. And by the way, you can also create other information like performance support content, like checklists, how-to guides, best practices, things like that. So anyone who wants to create content, basically anyone who wants to share his knowledge with his co-workers is allowed to do that and can create a license. And very often there's no interference of the L&D department. So it's just a facility they offer, and it's up to the employee to decide whether or not to create content and to publish it. So a bottom-up approach. So basically, EGL works in both ways as long as the subject matter expert is responsible for the maintenance and the creation. We also have a customer that uses Easygenerator as part of a whole new learning ecosystem. So very often you have a mix between regulated and democratized, and they have that as well. So what they found is that the mandatory training is like, in their mind, 5% of the total learning. And mandatory training, then we talk about compliance training, about security training, things like that. So that content is most of the time made in a regulated approach, and they publish that most of the time into a learning management system. So really old school, although they use subject experts to create that content. But they also have, for the other 95%, it is the employee who's in charge. But that content is not published in the LMS, that is published in a learning experience platform. If you really quickly compare the two, an LMS is more like a TV station that sort of broadcasts and you have a program you have to follow. So top down, and an LXP is more like Netflix. So all the content is there waiting for the viewer, in this case, the learner, to go in and find it. So also bottom up a way of getting that content. The other three things that we see, because it's way faster, so cost and capacity, if those are issues, people use that as drivers for employee-generated learning. Some of the companies really believe that it is the business responsibility to create maintenance and to create content and maintain it. So they really want to apply this for them. So they force them to sort of take that responsibility and take it away from a centralized department. And because it's so much faster, a lot of companies use this to solve the problem. And the problem that they have is that the creation of e-learning is just slower than this business change, the change of the speed of change of the business side. So this is the only way to create content that can keep. So very quickly, is Easygenerator and employee-generated learning, can you use it for everything? There are a whole bunch of things you can say about that, but if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, there are 6 levels of learning, and from very simple, level 1, to very complex. And what we found is that in principle, only the bottom 3 you can have created by subject matter experts. So that means if it goes about remembering, about learning stuff, or being able to apply something, those 3 levels that can be covered without a lot of instructional design knowledge. And we have, by the way, that design knowledge built into the tool. If it becomes more difficult, then you need instructional design knowledge. So for simpler courses that are on the lower end of the spectrum of Bloom's taxonomy, it is really well usable. So that was my story for today. So any questions, let me know. I think we have a few seconds left. No, I don't think so. Okay. Thank you, then.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye.
Goodbye.